Carol Dweck, professor of psychology at Stanford University and author of The Growth Mindset, once described the growth mindset like this. In a growth mindset, challenges are exciting rather than threatening. So rather than thinking, oh, I'm going to reveal my weakness, you say, wow, here's a chance to grow. No other part of this course has the power to change your career and your life like this one. Welcome to the lesson on growth mindset. Having a growth mindset can be one of the most powerful tools for success, both in your career and in your personal life. In this lesson, we'll talk about what a growth mindset is, how to get one, and how to encourage your teams to develop one. Let's get started. A growth mindset is a belief that intelligence can be developed. Students with a growth mindset understand they can get smarter through hard work, the use of effective strategies, and help from others when needed. It is contrasted with a fixed mindset, which is the belief that intelligence is a fixed trait, set in stone at birth. Now, to be honest, everyone has a mixture of growth and fixed mindsets depending upon the topic. Sometimes acting outside your comfort zone can trigger a fixed mindset, or seeing someone do something much better than you can make you feel like you can't achieve the same level of success. In our social media focused world, we often look at others' posts and think they're easily achieving the success that seems to elude us. We may even get discouraged and think that because we have to work hard and fail, we aren't meant or cut out to achieve the same success. This particular set of fixed mindset and growth mindset characteristics that you're looking at on this slide help to kind of give you an idea of the difference between this fixed mindset and this growth mindset. People in a growth mindset are more open to possibilities. They're more excited about things that they could learn versus worried about the mistakes that they could make. They see challenges as opportunities versus roadblocks put up in their way. We'll talk in the next slide on how you can actually build a growth mindset. So, how do you cultivate and build a growth mindset? What specifically can you do to ensure that you're creating a way of thinking that will ensure future success? Allow you to see setbacks as opportunities. Well, there are lots of examples of growth mindsets on the internet, but not as many steps to take to build this outlook. So I've included on this slide 10 actions that you can take to develop this kind of thinking or strengthen your growth mindset abilities if you already think this way. These simple 10 steps can be used time and time again to help improve your growth mindset even after you're already very practiced in this way of thinking. Let's start with the first one, the power of yet. It really harnesses your ability to reframe limiting thinking. Every time you find yourself thinking, I can't do that, or oh, I'm not good at that, add the word yet onto the sentence. I can't do that yet, or I'm not good at that yet. Suddenly, instead of telling your brain that you can't do something, you'll be telling yourself that you just are still developing that skill. The brain will fill in the rest. That's the amazing thing about our brains. If you can't do something yet, then maybe you will someday. Instead of defining your limits, you'll be setting up new possibilities. The next in this series is WWIDD, which stands for What Would I Do Differently? When faced with a setback or reflecting on the day, it's easy to beat yourself up for what you should have done. Oh, next time you could have done this or you should have done that. But next time, simply ask yourself what you could do differently. This way, you're capturing the learning and planning how you will improve instead of getting down on yourself. The third area is LLL, which stands for lifelong learning. This is critical to how you train your brain, and it's one of the reasons or impulses that led you to this course. Becoming a lifelong learner, it's a critical way to build a growth mindset and also just build an interesting life. It doesn't matter what you learn. It could be about art, science, sewing, sports, fashion, movies. It can be anything. The act of learning puts you in a place of knowing nothing and pushes you out of your comfort zone. As you gain new knowledge, new opportunities open up and you find yourself richer than you were before. There are so many free options online to learn. YouTube demonstrations, public resources, local nonprofit organizations, just to name a few. If you're stuck and wonder how to learn what to learn, reach out to your local librarian. You'd be surprised how quickly they'd be able to give you ideas and resources for your next learning adventure. The fourth area here with the little light bulb and the question mark is called passion or purpose. And it's supposed to illustrate this idea of what are you curious about? Elizabeth Gilbert talks about the challenge of finding passion and encourages us to think less about passion, which sounds so overwhelming and consuming that it's hard to relate to, and think instead about curiosity. What are you curious about? As we go through life, it's important to have a purpose or a passion or something that we're curious about beyond the day to day, something that's important to us and that we want to devote time to and pursue excellence. Now, maybe it's your family, that's your passion, and you want to learn how to be a better parent. Or maybe it's a hobby or a skill that you really feel like you're in your zone when you're doing that. Maybe you want to get to a new level in your career. Your purpose can change over time, but having one that's larger than your day to day job and tasks keeps you thinking bigger, and that helps develop a growth mindset. The last one in this top line here is the check marks on the clipboard. And that's to illustrate this idea of celebrating actions, not traits. It's not who you are, but what you do and keep doing that moves you forward. Now, oftentimes we get stuck thinking that we are or are not a specific something. I'm not creative, I'm not a runner. But in addition to the power of yet, we talked about in number one, it's also important to celebrate the actions that you take. What creative thing did you do? How many steps forward did you take? How many minutes did you run, even if it was only 1 minute? Celebrate the fact that you took the action rather than the trait that you may or may not have. On the bottom row, starting over at the left, you see the two little footprints. That stands for baby steps. Moving forward is good. Even if it isn't as far as you think you should be, keep doing the work. Keep moving forward. You know it will pay off. They always talk about the difference between a success and a failure is that the person who's successful just kept at it a little bit longer. You can even practice by mapping out some small steps that you can take today. If you feel overwhelmed by a goal that you're trying to reach or the amount of work that you have to do, what's one thing? Just one thing. Can you send an email? Make a phone call? Read a chapter? Every little thing helps, and taking baby steps helps your brain see the progress that you're making. It takes you out of that place of negativity and into the place of action. The next one with the suitcase is an important one because the truth is we can't all be positive all the time. We can't always be thinking, oh, I just need to take one step forward. Sometimes life just happens and it gets us down, and that's okay. But when you do get down, make sure that you think about that place that you're in as just a place you're visiting, not your place you're moving to. If you're fatigued or you're sad, that's fine, but don't live there. Having a growth mindset doesn't mean you can't ever feel sad, but it means you don't stay there. You just understand that feeling is part of the journey towards moving to success. My 16-year-old daughter often says that when she's faced with something difficult, I have a good cry and then I figure it out. Make sure you take the time to express your sadness and get some rest. And know that it's only temporary. Once you have had your good cry, get up and move out of that stage. The next one on this page is the target. And if you'll notice, the target is a little fuzzy. I tried to make that dotted line around the outside because I think this is really important. Everybody talks about goals and make a goal and have a goal. Well, that's great. But I think we really set ourselves up for failure when we make rigid goals. So that fuzzy outline is designed to be fuzzy and moving, and you can recreate it and really kind of create this idea of movement. Rigid goals often lead to failure. Flexible goals and making new goals leads to success. If you build your growth mindset by resetting your goals often, it's going to be much easier. It's kind of like falling off a diet. If you have a very strict goal that you're going to just eat certain foods and that you're going to exercise and it's just going to be the way that you're going to achieve this goal and that's your step and that's your goal, and then you wake up and it's an ice storm and you can't go out and exercise and you end up having pancakes or a cookie, you sometimes think to yourself, well, that's it. I've blown my diet. I failed. I might as well order pizza and eat the whole thing on my couch, binge watching TV. But in all honesty, you could remake your goal. You could tell yourself, wow, those pancakes and that cookie was delicious, sluggish and exactly what I needed. Now, back to my diet. Let's see if I can do better in the next hour and not eat anything bad for me. Maybe I'll go on a walk. No one ever moved towards a goal in a straight line. That's a complete myth. We're all going back and forth and up and down and figuring things out. And if you reset your goals often as you need to, you can reach them faster. The little welcome mat there is about welcoming something that's hard to welcome: criticism. Someone in the growth mindset looks at criticism and says, "Hey, that's something that it's a feedback on what I'm doing, and I could do things differently, so I want to hear that feedback." Somebody in a fixed mindset thinks, "Oh, well, they're talking about me and my essence," and no, they're not. They're just talking about what they're seeing, which is a small part of your personality. So, getting feedback and welcoming constructive criticism is an important part of the growth mindset. So, start small. Start asking somebody you really love, you really care about, and ask them to give you some, honest feedback. What could you do better? What did you miss? What can you do differently in their minds? And then practice just sitting and hearing their feedback. Not thinking about what you're going to do to say to rebuttal that, but just hear their feedback. Think about their advice and reflect not on who you are, but on what you're doing. And lastly, this may sound a little strange, but it is absolutely true and supported by scientific evidence. Our subconscious brain doesn't understand sarcasm. Our subconscious is kind of unique in that it really just monitors and controls all of the things that are beneath the surface: our heartbeat, our breathing, all of these different kind of processes that we don't have to think about. Our subconscious brain is handling. And one of the things that our subconscious brain also handles is the way information is stored in our brain. It's really just taking it and storing it. Think about it like a little factory worker. It's not really thinking about what it is that it's unloading from the truck. It's just unloading the truck. So what you put on that truck is kind of important because it's going to get unloaded. And even if you think you're being sarcastic, like, "Oh, I'm so stupid," or "Oh my God, I'm so fat," that gets unloaded on the truck and stored. And you may think it doesn't matter, but it does. Over time, it can affect you. There have been so many examples and scientific studies and experiments where they've had somebody talk about the fact that they feel like they're going to throw up over and over and over again until they actually feel nauseous. That's because your subconscious brain is unloading that truck. If you can fill the truck with other things, and here's the key, even things you don't believe. You don't have to believe it, just load the truck with it. And loading the truck sometimes takes the form of affirmations. Sometimes you can write daily affirmations. I'm healthy and strong. I'm an exceptional parent. I'm on my way to becoming a leader. You can put those affirmations in and you can say them. Even if you don't say them with conviction, say them every day. You'll be reloading the truck. Your subconscious mind will unload the truck and it will start to actually reprogram your brain. Now, the next is how to build your growth mindset in your team. So now we're going to shift from thinking about what you need to do and think about what you need to do from the perspective of your team. So the first thing that you need to do when you're building a growth mindset on your team is to really create this idea of psychological safety. It needs to be a safe place for your team to express themselves and try new things. So people have to be free to be wrong or do something that doesn't work and have it still be okay. The idea of creating an atmosphere where you feel comfortable to speak and act without worrying about repercussions is this building a psychological safety. People feel supported and able to speak their mind without worrying if someone will retaliate. Team members can disagree with each other and still be friends. Think about how you create that atmosphere on your team. Well, the biggest ways to create psychological safety is to not do certain things. Don't belittle a team member. This is a big one. If somebody says something stupid, don't belittle them. Don't call them out. Don't say, "Well, that was an odd thing to suggest." Don't even comment on that way. And if somebody else starts to say something about somebody else's comment, support the person that's being belittled. Use them as a growing opportunity and see if you can greenhouse the idea. What could you add to it? How could you water it to make it better? people will start to recognize that that belittling attitude is not allowed on your team and they just won't do it anymore. Don't be condescending. You're going to have more knowledge as a leader than the people on your team are. Don't use this as a battering ram. Don't be condescending. Really be there with your team members. And when they say something in discussion, help to raise them up. Don't interrupt. This is a huge one. Your team members are making a point and they're struggling and they're trying to figure out what to say. You may feel like you're excited and you know what they're going to say and you want to complete their sentence. Don't do it. This is one of my biggest ones that I have to remind myself every single time in a meeting. Don't interrupt the team members. Listen and take in and give them the spotlight. Don't micromanage projects. This is another huge one. Focus on on what's being done, not the how. The how is their job. If they want to do this in a certain way, make sure that it's still efficient and meeting the deadlines, but that's it. Get back. Let them have the autonomy and the empowerment to own that achievement. And you do that by not micromanaging the projects. This is a great one that I think is super important about celebrating failure. And this picture here is my daughter on her first time on skis. She's about, I think, maybe 7 or 8 years old at this point. So when she and her brother got on skis, she knew that this was really something important to me. So my daughter and my son were both super excited to learn to ski. They knew that I'd grown up skiing and that I really wanted us to ski as a family. So on their first trip down the bunny hill, they were super excited and they both fell. Now that's not surprising, it's perfectly fine. But wow, did they really feel bad. They had no idea that they will fall so hard or so completely. And if you've ever skied, you know that you can really wipe out in a significant way on skis. So my daughter fell and she burst into tears. Now I skied right over to her and I immediately started congratulating her. Great job, I said. That was an awesome fall. You did that so well. Look, you even lost a ski and you didn't break anything. That's great. And she kind of looked at me a little puzzled, but she stopped crying and I went on. All great skiers have to fall at least 400 times before they're any good. And you were one more step closer to being a great skier. Only 399 more falls to go. She stopped crying and she got up and put her ski on. And then I heard her tell her younger brother as she was making her way down the rest of the mountain, "Don't worry, I'm sure you'll fall soon too." Now, when you treat failure as a step in the learning process and raise it up, you're not only building great psychological safety, you're promoting innovation. You create a process of learning and trial that's going to benefit your team's performance over time. No one's perfect every day. A resilient, high-performing team doesn't achieve great things because they're smarter. They achieve great things because they failed and learned from them. So celebrate failure on your team. 3 simple steps. Acknowledge the failure and express gratitude for the effort that was put into that. Nobody sets out to fail. They were setting out to achieve. Express gratitude for their effort. Lead a learning discussion. Avoid placing blame and gently correct any team member who tries to blame others, and really lead a discussion on what can we do differently next time. And lastly, socialize the learnings. Share what can be done better next time. If you're just taking notes on a piece of paper or on a poster board or something, put it up on outside in a public place and say, these are all the things that we learned from this last debrief. It really promotes the fact that your team learns and that learning is important. Now, some failures can be more painful than others, but taking these steps can build stronger team and gain you considerable respect. The times when a manager of mine has chosen to celebrate and learn from a painful failure rather than blame me or others or vent, it's really burned into my memory. I hold these leaders in high regard after many, many years. The next thing after providing psychological safety and celebrating failure is to encourage productive struggle. Now, this is a little bit of a different one and sometimes really hard, especially for new managers. You've got a lot of knowledge and people are going to come to you wanting to know what to do, and you're going to feel like as a leader you should tell them. But just like the little boy in this particular cartoon, the teacher didn't tell him how to do the problem. She let him productively struggle through it until he got to the solution. So this type of mental challenge that it's experienced by a student on their way to a solution has value. It ends up being more valuable a lesson It ends up developing more synapses in the brain and more connections between neurons than simply being told the answer. So, if you want a growth learning mindset in your team, the act of finding the solution has to be owned by the people on your team, even when you know the solution, which is super hard. So, you need to resist answering whenever your employees come to you with a problem to solve. So, how do you do this? Well, very simple. When they come to you and they're stuck and they want to know how to solve a challenge, instead of responding with the answer, just respond with something like, not sure. What do you think? Or, tell me more. What do you think we should do? Get them talking. You'll be surprised. Oftentimes, they know exactly what should be done and they just need verification or they just need a little bit of confidence. And sometimes their solution is better than anything that I could have come up with. So it gives you a chance to really help them through the problem solving process and encourages them to explore a solution. Now, if they are really struggling and they're going in a certain direction, then you can certainly provide more guidance, and that should be your job. But ideally, they should arrive at the solution on their own. There's a saying, small victories win the war. Oftentimes, however, people lose sight of how incremental progress builds on their goals. This can be especially true in high stress work environments like an advertising agency. Being able to recognize small wins is critical to building a growth mindset on your team. You can help foster a growth mindset by highlighting progress, praising a team for small steps forward that may have taken a significant effort. If you've got a message or a concept approval from the medical and legal team, celebrate, call it out. Be sure to mention the contribution of each team member too. It will ensure that they really feel seen and that you solidly understand the right actions that they've been engaged in. That will reinforce this idea of working together to provide payoff over time. So being on the right track is a really great place to be, even if you aren't all the way there yet. So this whole idea about building a growth mindset is important, but you'll notice this last one here at the bottom, which is probably the hardest one. To build a team with a growth mindset, you have to model it yourself. So the truth is, it's really hard to have a growth mindset. We all have times when we're suffering and have negative emotions and feelings. Maybe we've lost a big account, or we didn't win a pitch, or we've been passed over for a promotion, or maybe in our personal life we've got our heart broken, or we're dealing with a health issue or a sick family member. As a leader, you're called to really set aside your personal feelings and do what the team needs. And that's super hard. So it's fine to share some of what you're going through with your team. I mean, you're human after all. But it isn't a good idea to make decisions and comments about the work from that negative place. This requires a lot of self-control. If you find yourself in a difficult place, you need to take a moment to really think through the growth mindset philosophy I've outlined in this lesson and practice a few of the exercises before having any kind of meeting with your team. Make sure you're displaying the kind of figure it out attitude that you want from your team. If they see you and know that you're in a difficult place and still moving forward with this important way of thinking, it can even be a great opportunity to solidify the growth mindset in your team. Your team is going to look to you to understand what's expected and what's allowed. And that means when it's up to you to show up in the way that you want them to show up and being positive, even when you're not feeling your best.